The message arrived Monday morning, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Dad, family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't be late. I was in my lab reviewing raw data from the latest climate modeling project. My research assistant glanced at me as my phone rang. Is everything all right, Dr. Maxwell? Family matters? Nothing urgent. I silenced my phone and returned to the data. But that evening, I drove to my parents' suburban Maryland home, the same colonial-style house I grew up in, where family dinners were a cherished tradition, and where success was measured by titles, salaries, and social standing. My brother Brandon's Mercedes was parked in the driveway. My sister Lauren's Range Rover was parked beside it. I pulled up next to them in my practical, reliable, comfortable 5-year-old Honda. Inside, the family was gathered in the living room. Dad sat in his usual chair, looking serious. Mom was on the couch, wringing her hands. Brandon and his wife Nicole sat together, both smartly dressed for work even though it was 7 p.m. Lauren stood by the fireplace, her arms crossed. Natalie, sit down. Dad gestured to the remaining chair. She sat. We need to discuss Thanksgiving, he began. Okay. More specifically, we need to discuss whether or not you're coming. She waited. Your mother and I have spoken, he continued. We've built a reputation in this community. Our family name carries weight. Brandon is a partner at one of the top law firms. And Lauren just became a vice president at Goldman Sachs. We're respected, we're successful, and we're well connected. I know that. So you'll understand why we're concerned about your situation. About your situation, Mom said, her voice quiet but firm. Honey, you're 31. You have a PhD, which is great, but you haven't done anything with it. You work at some government lab, doing research that no one understands. You live in a tiny apartment in the city. You drive an old car. You dress like a graduate student. I am a researcher, Mom, that's what I do. But it's not a real career, Lauren said. How much do you make? $60,000 a year. That's embarrassing. Embarrassing for whom? For all of us. Brandon leaned forward. Last month, at my company's party, someone asked about my sister's job. I had to say, you work for the government doing climate research. They looked at me like I was a park ranger. There's nothing wrong with park rangers. That's not the point. Dad's voice rose. The point is you're bringing shame to the family. Our Thanksgiving dinner includes partners from Brandon's company, executives from Lauren's bank, and prominent members of our country club. We can't stand to see you there talking about ice cores and carbon emissions when everyone else is discussing real achievements. The words hung in the air, so I wasn't invited, I said quietly. We think this is for the best, Mom said, tears welling in her eyes. Just this year, while you find a real career path, maybe you could work in consulting or politics or whatever sounds more impressive, something that makes you look better. Don't get carried away, Lauren said. We're trying to help you understand how things work in the real world. Status matters. Connections matter. Nobody cares about academic research. I stood up. Is that it? Dad nodded. Thanksgiving is canceled for you. Maybe next year when you've accomplished something in your life. Understood. Happy Thanksgiving. I walked out. I sat in my car for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel. My phone rang. Dad, this is for your own good. It's going to be very embarrassing for you to be here. You're bringing shame on the family. Understood, I replied. Then I drove to my small apartment, a 2-bedroom flat I'd bought with cash 3 years earlier, without a mortgage, because government jobs pay better than my family had anticipated. They had no idea what I actually did. Yes, I worked for the government, but not as a simple lab technician as they'd assumed. I was Dr. Natalie Maxwell, the president's chief scientific advisor on climate and ecosystem policy. I'd been appointed by the president herself 18 months earlier, after my research on capturing carbon from the atmosphere won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. A Nobel Prize. My family hadn't noticed because they'd stopped following my career years ago. They didn't know about the Nobel Prize. They didn't know about my appointment to the president's cabinet. They didn't know that I was advising world leaders on climate policy. They didn't know that I'd testified before Congress 6 times. They didn't know that my research had been published in prestigious journals like Nature and Science, and in all the major scientific journals. They saw a government researcher and assumed I was a failed academic. I stopped correcting them after my father, for the 3rd time, dismissed my work in climate science as a mere hobby. What was the point of explaining when they'd already decided I was a disappointment to the family? 2 days after being excluded from Thanksgiving dinner, I received an email from the White House Chief of Staff. Subject: Thanksgiving dinner with the President. Dr. Maxwell. The President would like to host a small Thanksgiving dinner for senior advisors and cabinet members. She hopes you will attend. Thursday, November 23rd, at 4 p.m. State Dining Room. Please confirm. I smiled and typed back. I would be honored. The White House Thanksgiving dinner has become a tradition, a private gathering for the President's closest advisors, key cabinet members, and a few distinguished guests. Last year, I was new to the position and wasn't invited. This year, my name was apparently on the list. The next 2 weeks were packed. Testimony before Congress on the new climate bill, meetings with international delegations, and a presentation to the National Science Foundation on our latest research findings. My family didn't contact me once. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up early in my small apartment and dressed meticulously. I bought a new dress for the occasion. It was burgundy, elegant, and suitable for a formal dinner at the White House. My phone buzzed with messages from friends, colleagues, and former professors wishing me a happy Thanksgiving. Nothing from my family. At 2:30 p.m., my driver arrived. One of the perks of being a presidential advisor. My security clearance allowed me quick access to the White House complex. We drove through the streets of Washington, D.C., and saw homes where families were gathering for Thanksgiving dinner. I remembered my parents' house in Maryland. I imagined them preparing for their lavish dinner party. Brandon and Nicole arriving with fine wines. Lauren showing off her latest promotion. Everyone congratulating themselves on their success, completely ignoring the absent family member who was a source of embarrassment. We arrived at the White House at 3:45 p.m. Security let us through after checking IDs and passes. We parked in the designated spot, and I walked toward the entrance of the East Wing. Dr. Maxwell, a familiar voice called out. Secretary of State Michelle Torres was stepping out of her car. We had worked together extensively on international climate agreements. Madam Secretary, please. It's Thanksgiving. Call me Michelle. She linked her arm with mine as we walked. I'm so glad you're here. The president wants to discuss amendments to the Paris Agreement over dinner. You're the only one who really gets the science, I told her. I'm happy to help. We walked in together, past security, and down the corridor to the state dining room. The room was magnificent. The tables were set with the finest porcelain, crystal, and silver. Name tags marked each seat. I found mine between Secretary Torres and the National Security Advisor, directly opposite the president's seat. It read, Dr. Natalie Maxwell, the president's science advisor. Other guests arrived. The Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. About 30 people in total. The president's inner circle, the people who run the country. At precisely 4 p.m., the president entered. Everyone stood. Please have a seat, she said warmly. It's Thanksgiving. Let's keep things calm. She sat opposite me and smiled. Dr. Maxwell, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Madam President. I wanted to personally thank you for your work on the emissions framework. The bill passed the House of Representatives, thanks to your testimony. It's just my duty. You are so humble. Michelle told me that the EU delegation specifically asked for your opinion on their carbon targets. They are making excellent progress. Dinner began. The traditional Thanksgiving feast prepared by the White House chefs. Turkey stuffing, cranberry sauce, all the classic dishes, but with a sophisticated, refined twist, served in the White House state dining room. Conversation swirled around me. Political discussions interspersed with personal anecdotes. The Attorney General spoke about her family's Thanksgiving traditions. The Secretary of Defense described his grandson's first Thanksgiving. The atmosphere was warm and genuine, far more authentic than my family's status-focused dinners of years. Around 5:30 p.m., after the main course but before dessert, the White House photographer approached. Dr. Maxwell, would you mind if we took some pictures? The president likes to document these dinners for the archives. Of course, the photographer made sure to capture accurate images of the table, the seating arrangements, and the distinguished guests. She took several pictures of me talking with Secretary Torres and of the president laughing at something the chief of staff said. In one photo, my name tag was clearly visible, Dr. Maxwell, scientific advisor to the president. Behind me, the presidential seal was prominently displayed on the wall. The formal table setting, the other cabinet members, the grandeur of the state dining room, all were perfectly captured. Beautiful, the photographer said, reviewing her screen. These will be great for the archives. After she left, I glanced at my phone. A text from my research assistant. Happy Thanksgiving, Dr. Maxwell. Have a wonderful day. I opened my social media accounts, something I rarely use, reserving them mostly for professional communication. My last post was 3 months ago, sharing a link to a published research paper. I glanced at the camera as it passed by again. Why not? I took out my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a quick picture of my seating arrangement. My name tag was clearly visible. The state dining room stood out in the background. Secretary Torres was laughing beside me. I posted the photo on my social media accounts with a simple caption. Grateful to spend Thanksgiving at the White House with exceptional government employees. It is an honor to serve you. I put my phone on silent and resumed the conversation. Dessert was served, pumpkin pie, apple pie, and chocolate mousse. Then tea and coffee were offered. The conversation continued, becoming quieter and more relaxed. The president rose around 7 p.m. to deliver remarks. Raising her glass, she said, "I am grateful to all of you. You work tirelessly and often without recognition to serve this country. You sacrifice time with your families to be here and do the hard work of governing. Thank you." Everyone raised their glasses. The president continued, "I would like to especially thank Dr. Maxwell, whose research and advice have been invaluable. The climate law passed last month will be her legacy, a framework that protects our environment for generations to come. Natalie, thank you for your brilliance and dedication." The audience applauded. I felt a flush of embarrassment rise to my face. "Thank you, Madam President." After dinner, the groups regrouped to continue the conversation. Minister Torres called me aside. I had intended to ask her, "Are you available next month?" "The UN Climate Conference in Copenhagen. They specifically asked you to be the keynote speaker." "I'll check my schedule, but it would be an honor." "Well, the world needs to hear from scientists like you. Real experts, not just politicians talking about things we don't fully understand." My phone, still on silent, kept ringing in my bag. I ignored it. At 8:30 p.m., I said goodbye and thanked the president personally. "Dr. Maxwell, before you left, handed me a small box, a token of appreciation for your service this year. Inside were a pair of presidential cufflinks and a handwritten note. To Dr. Maxwell, Natalie Maxwell, whose work will resonate through history with gratitude and respect. President Morrison." I held back my tears. "Madam President, I don't know what to say. Just say you'll continue to fight for what's right. That's all I ask." In the car on the way home, I finally checked my phone. 127 missed calls, 348 texts. Social media notifications exploded. Thousands of likes, hundreds of shares, countless comments. My family's messages started around 6 p.m. "Cassie, call me now." "Lauren, is this real? Call me right away." "Mom, Natalie Maxwell. What's going on?" "Dad, we need to talk. Call me as soon as possible." "Brandon, the White House. You were at the White House, sister." "Lauren, your badge says President's Advisor for Science." "President's Advisor for Science." "Sister." "Mom, why didn't you tell us?" "Sister." "Dad, this is unacceptable. You owe us an explanation." Then, as the evening wore on, they were clearly looking for me. "Brandon, you won the Nobel Prize." "The Nobel Prize, Lauren. Wikipedia says you've been the President's Advisor for Science for 18 months. Mom, there are pictures of you with the president. Many pictures at different events." "Brandon, why didn't you tell us you won the Nobel Prize?" "Lauren, you've testified before Congress 6 times. Dad, call me right away. We need to discuss this." I didn't answer any of them. At home, I changed into something comfortable, made tea, and sat on my couch with a book. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. "Lauren," voicemail. "Dad," voicemail. Voicemail. 17 calls from my brother by 11 p.m. I listened to only one voicemail. Dad sounded agitated. "Natalie, this is ridiculous. We just saw your picture from the White House. You were sitting next to the Secretary of State. Your seat card said Advisor to the President for Science. We looked you up. Nobel Prize, advising the President, testifying before Congress. Why didn't you tell us? Call me back. Right now. We need to understand what's going on." I deleted the message without listening to the rest. Friday morning, I woke up to find my family had taken a more drastic approach. They were parked in front of the building. All of them. Dad's BMW, Brandon's Mercedes, Lauren's Range Rover. A small convoy of luxury cars, making a racket in the parking lot. I made coffee and watched from my window as they argued with building security about being allowed to leave. My phone rang. It was the building manager. "Dr. Maxwell, I'm so sorry to bother you. There are several people here claiming to be from your family. They're very insistent on seeing you." "I know. Please tell them I'm unavailable." "Are you sure? They seem very determined." "I'm sure. Thanks for checking." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from the building manager. They'd left, but they said they'd be back. I spent Friday working from home, analyzing data, writing reports, and making calls to colleagues about the Copenhagen conference. My family kept messaging me. "Mom, please talk to us. We just want to understand." "Lauren, Cassie, this is crazy. You're a Nobel laureate and you've never said a word." "Brandon, we're a family. You owe us an explanation." "Dad, your behavior is unacceptable. Call me." Around 3 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I looked through the keyhole. Lauren was alone. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Cassie, thank goodness." He tried to hug me. I stepped back. "What do you want, Lauren?" "To talk. To understand. How come you didn't tell us any of this?" "Tell you what? That you're a presidential advisor. That you won the Nobel Prize. That you work at the White House?" "I don't work at the White House. I'm a presidential advisor who's sometimes invited to the White House for meetings and events. Most of my work is in my lab. Your lab, which is part of the National Science Foundation with a $40 million annual budget." Obviously, she was doing research. That lab? Yes. Cassie, why didn't you tell us? Tell you what exactly? That I won the Nobel Prize. I won it 3 years ago. I sent an email to the family chat group. Dad replied, "That's lovely, honey." Then he asked if anyone wanted to go to his club for dinner. She went pale. This is unbelievable. Check your email history. October 2021. Subject: I won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling nervously through her messages. Her face went from pale to red. "Oh my God, you already texted us. And we ignored it because you'd already decided my work was worthless." "We didn't ignore it. We just thought maybe you were joking or that it was some minor academic award, not the real Nobel Prize." "Why would I joke about it?" "Because we didn't know. You never explained. I emailed you saying I'd won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for my research on carbon capture from the atmosphere. What more explanation did you need?" She had no answer. "Lauren, Dad texted me 2 weeks ago saying I was a disgrace to the family, that my presence at Thanksgiving would be embarrassing, that I was a disappointment. He didn't mean it. He meant every word. You all meant it. You left me out of Thanksgiving because you were ashamed of me. We didn't know. You didn't ask me. For 3 years, you never asked me about my job, my research, or my life. You saw a government job and assumed I was a failure because I dress casually. I drive an old car. I live in a small apartment. That apartment costs $3,800 a month, which I pay in cash. I drive a reliable car because I don't care about status symbols. I dress casually because I work in a lab. None of that is a sign of failure. It's a difference of priorities. But you never said, "I tried, Lauren." At every family dinner, I tried to talk about my work. You'd change the subject. Or you'd joke about how boring climate change was. Or Dad would say that real success is making money, not doing research. He's crying now. We were wrong. Yes, you were wrong. Can you forgive us? I don't know. Please, Cassie. We're a family. A family doesn't cut each other off for Thanksgiving. A family doesn't call each other embarrassing. A family doesn't spend 3 years assuming the worst without bothering to ask. We want to fix this. So start paying attention to my life, really. Not because I won a Nobel Prize or advised the president, but because I'm your sister and my work matters to me. We can do this, can't we? Because you haven't cared for 3 years. Why should I believe you're going to change now? She had no answer. Lauren, I think you should go. Wait, please. Dad wants to apologize. Mom is devastated. Brandon feels bad. Fine. They should feel bad. Don't be cruel. I'm not cruel. I'm honest. They were cruel when they stopped me from coming to Thanksgiving. I just refused to pretend nothing happened. He left in tears. I went back to my couch, my cup of tea, and my book. The weekend passed. More messages from family. More attempts at visits that building security turned down. Monday morning, I was back at work in my lab. My colleagues greeted me warmly. "Dr. Maxwell, we saw the pictures of the White House. How was dinner?" "Wonderful. The president wants to discuss amendments to the Paris Agreement." "That's amazing. We're so proud to work with you." This was my real family, my colleagues, my research team, my fellow scientists who understood and respected my work. That afternoon, I had a meeting at the White House to brief the president on the latest climate data. Secretary Torres was there, along with the EPA administrator and several senior policy advisors. We spent 2 hours discussing carbon reduction goals, international cooperation, and legislative strategy. As I was leaving, the president called me aside. "Dr. Maxwell, I've been following the interest on social media since Thanksgiving. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Madam President. Just some family issues." "I understand, but I have to say, your picture at dinner was fantastic at getting the public engaged with climate science. Your qualifications are impressive, and people are taking notice. I'm glad something good has come of it. May I offer you some unsolicited advice?" "Of course. Family relationships are complicated, but don't let their inability to see you clearly diminish what you've accomplished. You're changing the world, Natalie, and that's more important than their approval." "Thank you, Madam President." That evening, I finally connected with my family. I sent a single message to the family chat group. "I've received your messages. I need some time to process what's happened. When I'm ready to talk, I'll get in touch. Until then, please respect my privacy." The replies came immediately. "Mom, of course, darling, we love you. Lauren, take all the time you need. We're so sorry. Brandon, we're so proud of you. Cassie, we should have said that years ago." Dad's silence was telling. 2 days later, I received a handwritten letter on his personal stationery. "Natalie, I owe you an apology that words can't adequately express. I was wrong about your career, wrong about your choices, wrong about your life. I allowed my narrow concept of success to blind me to your extraordinary accomplishments. When you sent me that email about the Nobel Prize 3 years ago, I ignored it. I thought it was just a simple academic award, not worth taking seriously. I realize now how deeply insulting that was. You've accomplished more than I ever dreamed possible. You advised the president. You've won a Nobel Prize. You're changing climate policy for the entire world. And yet, I called you an embarrassment. I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I'm sorry I let my pride and prejudices damage our relationship. If you're willing, I'd like to try to rebuild what I've broken. I love that. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in my desk drawer and went back to my research. 3 weeks later, I flew to Copenhagen for the UN Climate Change Conference. I delivered the keynote address to representatives from 195 countries. The speech was broadcast live worldwide. My family watched it. I hadn't told them I was going to speak. They found out when someone from my dad's country club mentioned it. The day after my keynote, I received a package at my hotel. Inside was a framed photograph. My family at Thanksgiving years ago. All together and happy. On the back was a letter from my mom. This is how we were before we forgot what mattered. Can we ever go back to how we were? I took the photograph home with me. The following week, I invited them all to my lab. Mom, Dad, Lauren, Brandon. They came one Tuesday afternoon, dressed a little too formally for my research facility. I gave them a tour, showed them the equipment, explained my research, introduced them to my team, let them see my world, my work, my life. They listened intently. We talked in my office afterward. Dad said, "I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing you, for not asking you, for making you feel like you had to hide your accomplishments. I didn't hide them. You just weren't paying attention. I know, and I'm sorry." Lauren added, "We all were. We were so engrossed in our own definitions of success that we completely missed yours. Mine isn't all that different." I said, "I wanted to do meaningful work, make a difference, contribute something valuable. You couldn't see beyond the surface. We see you now." My mother said, "We're so proud of you, Natalie. Not because you advised the president or won a Nobel Prize, though that's an extraordinary achievement, but because you followed your passion and changed the world. That means more than you can imagine." Brandon cleared his throat. "Can we start over? Can I really get to know my sister instead of the person I assumed she was?" I looked at them, my flawed, limited family finally apologizing. I said, "We can try, but things have to be different. You have to really care about my life, not just be impressed by my titles." My father promised, "We will." I swear to it. We didn't fix everything that day. 3 years of neglect and judgment couldn't be erased in a single conversation, but it was a start. The following year, for Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner, not at the White House. I'd been invited again, but I'd politely declined. Instead, I entertained my family in my small apartment. I cooked the dinner myself. I set the table with ordinary dishes, not fancy ones. We ate turkey and talked. We talked honestly. Dad asked about my current research. Lauren wanted to know more about the Copenhagen conference. Brandon was curious about working with the president. And Mom just wanted to hear about my life. The real details, the everyday details, those moments they'd missed. It wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard, but it was genuine. After dinner, Dad raised a glass. To Natalie, who taught us that success isn't about status, salary, or social standing. It's about passion, purpose, and making the world a better place. Everyone else raised their glasses. He added, his voice trembling slightly, that she forgave us because we were too blind to see what was right in front of our eyes. I raised my glass too. I said, "To family, the real family built on honesty, not assumptions." They echoed, "To family." My phone rang. A text from the president. "Happy Thanksgiving, Dr. Maxwell. Thankful for your service and brilliance." I smiled and put my phone down. This Thanksgiving, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not at the White House, though I deserved to be there. Not at my parents' prestigious home for a dinner party with their friends from the country club. Here in my apartment with my family, who finally saw me clearly. Last year, they rescinded my invitation because I had brought shame upon the family. This year, they understood that I had brought them honor, and that made all the difference.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है दिल का हर रोने की राहों में ये आंसू बहने लगते हैं। कहाँ जाऊं कहाँ ढूंढूं मेरा वो साजो सामा, तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू, मेरी रूह का मका तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था, वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा, मगर खामोश है दुनिया, कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत, मुझे है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर।